I could quite easily burn a Bible, and it's exceptionally unlikely that any Christians would even raise an eyebrow. After all, we live in a country where this is acceptable as free speech.
See all these fags everywhere, this filth that is over on this country. It's our job to preach to you guys.
Islam is the only religion I know of where an act as vanilla as drawing their profit can lead to millions of dollars in damage, embassies burning, and over 100 dead. Islam is the only religion I know of that would endorse religiously sanctioned murder for money.
This was the most extraordinarily reactionary challenge to the idea of free expression that had occurred in my lifetime. The theocratic head of a foreign state offers money in his own name for the suborning of murder, the offence being that of writing a work of fiction, and the purported victim, or intended victim, being someone who isn't an Iranian and lives in England. It was rather the same feeling as I later had on the 11th of September 2001, a direct confrontation between everything I love and everything I hate.
Within hours of the fatwa, 6 people had died and more than 160 had been wounded in violent demonstrations against the satanic verses in Pakistan and India.
I can't remember when it was now precisely that we got the news that his Italian translator had been horribly attacked and his Japanese translator had actually been murdered, but it was quite soon afterwards, I seem to remember.
In its ability to keep entire countries like Afghanistan in the Dark Ages, it's unparalleled.
They don't like education. They are very bad people.
The Taliban demonstrated how much they don't like education earlier this month. 3 children were killed and 40 others injured when a school was bombed as it opened just over the border in Pakistan. Teaching even the most basic arithmetic is seen as a threat to their ideology.
And then there's this obsession with the Qur'an.
The consequence is we have this single book, which is imagined to be the best book on any subject ever written, never to be superseded by any human effort at any point in the future. Now, this is a problem because this is a profoundly mediocre book. Okay? It is dangerous to say this. It is suicidal to say this as a Muslim. It is true. And we have to grapple with this fact. And the idea that this is the best book ever written on any subject can only be maintained in a kind of fantastical intellectual isolation. And this isolation has actually been achieved in the Arab world to an astonishing degree. Some of you probably have heard this fact, but the country of Spain translates more of the world's literature and learning into Spanish every year than the entire Arab world has translated into Arabic since the 9th century. Okay, that's scary. It's scary given that the contents of this book really offers precious little rationale for living in a sane and pluralistic global civilization.
I mean, damn, the leader of the most populous Islamic country on the planet said that the rest of the world not conforming with Islamic laws such as respect the Quran would pose a threat to world peace. And it looks like his assessment of his religion had a significant grain of truth, for when merely one Quran was burned, over 20 innocent people were killed by an Islamic mob, some of them beheaded. I mean, just think about that for a second. Someone offends your beliefs, and you have another random person in front of you. What would it take for you to go and find a knife, and to personally, with your own hands, cut an innocent person's head off, to personally saw through the skin, the flesh, the veins, the arteries, cartilage, and so on, while doubtless this person is begging for their life? To do that for the honour of your religion, and then afterwards to think that you did the right thing. That's messed up at a level that has to be addressed. That's a level of crazy that makes the most off-the-wall creationist look sane and balanced. I mean, really, there is no civilized country on this planet that would describe such behaviour in any other terms than psychopathic, comparable to the sickest of killers. The religion of Islam induced this behavior in these people because someone burned a book. Now, historically, that might not be that different from Christianity. Well, at least for the best part of the last 2,000 years. But the Enlightenment changed Christianity. Domesticated it, if you like. From a religion that thought that mental illnesses were in fact possessions by demons, or that witches should be burnt, or that battles were won or lost depending on whether God was on your side.
Our national leaders are sending them out on a task that is from God. That's what we have to make sure that we're praying for, that there is a plan and that plan is God's plan.
Well, mostly domesticated. But that's history. And today, now, Islam is in a class of its own in its ability to field violent adherents.
There is, I'm happy to say, a religion of peace in this world, but it's not Islam. Okay. To call Islam a religion of peace, as we hear ceaselessly reiterated, is completely delusional. Now, Jainism actually is a religion of peace. Jainism is the core principle of Jainism is nonviolence. Gandhi got his nonviolence from the Jains. The crazier you get as a Jain, the less we have to worry about you. Okay. It is. This is. Jain extremists are actually they are paralyzed by their pacifism. Jain extremists they can't take their eyes off the ground when they walk lest they step on an ant. They filter every sip of water through cheesecloth lest they swallow and thereby kill a bug. I mean, needless to say, they're vegetarian. So the problem, notice, the problem is not religious extremism, okay, because extremism is not a problem if your core beliefs are truly nonviolent. The problem isn't fundamentalism, which we often hear this said. These are euphemisms. I mean, the only problem with Islamic fundamentalism are the fundamentals of Islam.
And it is therefore not of a mere whim of the moment that I have focused, vigorously at times, on Islam. We must not allow the import, by threat of violence, of such ideas into the West. Ideas like religious censorship, be they imported by either the letter of the law or their de facto observance by threat of force. Sadly, the import has already begun, with free governments publicly caving to such pressure, the United Kingdom among them. We, ironically, the folk here on YouTube and Facebook and other social networking sites, those who have acted, both now and previously, have arguably had a bigger effect on repelling this import of religious dogma than many who would have seemed more comely. For example, due to our protest over the last week or so, hundreds of thousands to millions of digital copies of the Qur'an have gone up in smoke to highlight the absurdity of these religious laws that some of its adherents are willing to behead the innocent over. And yeah, because of your actions, the next time someone does something like this, and it's discussed in the West, the reply can simply be, but millions of copies of the Qur'an have been burnt to demonstrate the absurdity of these religious laws. And you did nothing about it. Why are you worked up now? It's that simple, diffusion of the threat by dilution. Desensitization, if you like. It's relatively easy for folks to get upset about a single, unique action. It's much more difficult for them to get that same level of response between burning the 145,349,121st and the 145,349,122nd copy of the Quran. I mean, really, what was so special about that last one that you are so worked up about? We set the precedent by decentralized global action. In this case, burning hundreds of thousands to millions of copies of the Quran. And that's peanuts. Several have written programs that could destroy billions of copies of the Quran every year. Yeah, welcome to the digital age. And sure, all of those Qurans were created specifically for this protest. There was no attempt to systematically destroy all Qurans. This was not a book burning of old. This was targeted specifically at showing the absurdity of these religious laws in the modern age. And because of this protest, it will be harder for anyone advocating such dogma to be outraged at the burning of just one more Quran. And thereby we have reduced the pressure on legislators to introduce laws to appease those who would see the reintroduction of Dark Age concepts such as religious dogma into the West. This is why Drama Hamaday is returning, disarming dogmatic threats by dilution. Only question is, are you going to be in the ranks of those who are setting the precedent such that the next generation does not have to live in fear of religious dogma imposed by religious violence?
Okay, because extremism is not a problem if your core beliefs are truly nonviolent. The problem isn't fundamentalism, which we often hear this said. These are euphemisms. I mean, the only problem with Islamic fundamentalism are the fundamentals of Islam. Now, we have Mullah Omar and Osama bin Laden and Khalid Sheikh Mohammed. These guys agree about the nature of reality and how to live within it. And the problem is they are giving a very plausible version of the faith. Osama bin Laden is not the Reverend Jim Jones of the Muslim world. It would be wonderful if he were, but the problem is he is giving a truly straightforward version of Islam, and you really have to be an acrobat to figure out how he's distorting the faith. Now, if these guys were Jains, or Buddhists, or Amish, or Quakers, it would be patently obvious how they were distorting their religion. I mean, in fact, their behavior would be unintelligible. Okay? It is not obvious by the light of Islam, and this is just a fact we have to speak honestly about.